Whispers Beneath Black Hollow. It began with silence. Not the kind you notice right away, but the kind that creeps up slowly, like the chill of a deepening dusk. The kind that eats the edges of sound until all that's left is your breath and the terrible weight of your thoughts. Evelyn Moore wasn't running from something when she moved to Black Hollow. Not exactly. It was more like drifting, leaving behind a fractured marriage, a job she no longer loved, and a city that had slowly gone gray. The countryside, with its hills and crooked forests, promised a blank page, but what she found instead was a place written in secrets, old and inked in blood. The cottage had stood empty for years. Nestled between two moss-choked hills, it was sold to her for almost nothing. The realtor said it had belonged to a man named Oswin Thorne, a historian who disappeared sometime in the 1960s. Evelyn didn't ask questions. She only saw the ivy-wrapped porch, the crooked chimney, and the window above the door that looked like a watchful eye. The first night, Evelyn dreamed of water, black and still. Something waited beneath its surface, but she couldn't see it, only feel it. Watching, patient. She woke up gasping, sweat slicking her skin. The room was cold. She could hear nothing, not wind, not trees, not even the old clock in the hall, just the slow throb of her heart. By the end of the first week, Evelyn had explored most of the house. Dust lay thick in every corner, and spiderwebs clung to beams like old lace. But there were stranger things too. Symbols carved into the base of the stairs, a book hidden behind loose bricks in the fireplace, and a trapdoor in the cellar floor locked tight with a rusted iron clasp. The book was bound in leather. Faded symbols decorated the cover, triangles, crescents, an eye with 7 lashes. Inside, handwritten pages in 2 different styles. The first was neat, dated 1912. The second, scrawled and chaotic, ended abruptly in 1959. They speak from the soil. The hollow is not empty, it is listening. The words haunted her. So did the trapdoor. Every night she'd hear something below, scraping, like fingernails on stone, or whispers. Faint and rhythmic, like a chant or prayer. She told herself it was rats. But the dreams were getting worse. In one, she stood in the forest, the trees around her withered and black. Above, the sky swirled with clouds shaped like faces, open-mouthed and screaming. The ground pulsed beneath her feet. Then, from the shadows, they came. Not people, not animals, things. With bone-white eyes and mouths stitched shut. They reached for her, and she woke screaming. Each day, Evelyn grew paler, hungrier yet unable to eat. Sleep came and went like a drug. The cottage creaked and whispered. At night, she heard footsteps in the hall. Her door would creak open on its own. Once, she found muddy footprints leading from the cellar to her bed. She started locking her door. One stormy night, Evelyn snapped. The whispers were louder, clearer. They said her name. She grabbed the old iron key she'd found inside the book's spine and descended into the cellar. Wind howled outside. Her flashlight flickered. The trapdoor's clasp broke with a groan. Beneath it, a staircase led into blackness. The air grew thick as she descended. The walls were carved with symbols, fresh, bleeding. The stairs ended in a cavern. At its center, a stone altar. And beside it, bones, piles of them, human and not, arranged in spirals. Candles flickered to life on their own. A presence filled the room. "You came," it said, not aloud, inside her head. Evelyn spun around. Shadows moved like liquid. Shapes drifted along the edges of her vision. She tried to run, but her legs locked. "You were always meant to return?" the voice whispered. "Your blood remembers." Then she saw them, figures in cloaks circling the altar. They had no faces, just voids where eyes should be. One reached out, and she felt it brush her skin. The world turned black. When she woke, she was in her bed. Morning light filtered through the curtains, birds chirped, but the cellar was gone. There was no trapdoor, no book, no bones. She tried to leave the house. Her car wouldn't start. The road was gone, replaced by trees. The village didn't answer her calls. Her phone displayed only static. Time bent around her. Days passed without light. Nights bled into mornings. She stopped eating. Her skin grew translucent. Then she heard the bell. It tolled once every night from somewhere beneath the floor. It summoned the shadows. They came up through the walls, gray, whispering, draping her room in frost. They told her what she was. Oswin Thorne was her grandfather. The book was his diary. The ritual was never finished. His bloodline had to return. She was the final piece. The hollow was not a place. It was a hunger, a wound in the world, fed by memory, sacrifice, silence. For centuries, it had slept. Now, it wanted more. One night, Evelyn answered the bell. She donned the robe, she took the blade from beneath the altar, and she carved the final sigil into her own chest. What rose from the pit was not human. It was older than speech, eyes like black suns. It sang in screams and moved through stone like mist. It wrapped around her, entering her skin, her bones. She screamed until her mouth bled. And then, silence. The cottage is for sale again. Charming, remote, needs love. The realtor smiles when you ask about the price. Bit of a fixer-upper, she says, but perfect for someone looking to get away. She doesn't mention the cold or the whispers. She doesn't tell you about Evelyn, but sometimes on windless nights you might hear the bell. And if you dream of black water, run. The Red Room in Briar Lane. The door was never there before. Lena Hargrove noticed it on a cold Thursday evening, just after moving into her new apartment at Musfebby Briar Lane. The building was old, pre-war, with iron railings that moaned in the wind and wallpaper that peeled like skin. The room itself was small but charming. At least it had been, until the door appeared. It wasn't part of the original floor plan. It stood in the far corner of the hallway, where a blank stretch of wall had been just the day before. The wood was darker than the rest of the apartment, red mahogany, old and polished. No handle, no keyhole, just a brass plate on the front with a single engraved word, Enter. At first, Lena laughed. She called the landlord, thinking it was some prank or maintenance quirk. There's no extra door in your unit, the landlord said. It's a one-bedroom. You have the kitchen, the bath, and a closet. That's it. She sent a photo. The landlord didn't respond. That night, Lena dreamed of someone knocking, not at the front door, from inside the red one. The knocking came again the next night, always 3 taps, always at 3:03 a.m. She set up her phone to record. The next morning, there was nothing but static. Her phone was warm to the touch, like it had been held against a stove. Then came the voices, soft, muffled, behind the wood. She couldn't make out words, but she could feel the emotion. Grief, anger, hunger. By the end of the week, Lena was unraveling. Sleep became a stranger. Shadows stretched longer. Her reflection in the mirror sometimes moved when she didn't. On the 6th night, she found a note slipped under her door. A page torn from an old journal, stained and creased. It read, "Don't open it, don't speak to it, and for the love of God, don't listen when it calls your name." There was no signature. But Lena was tired of fear. At 3:03 that night, when the knocking came, she stood in front of the door. It was open. Inside, only darkness. Thick and silent. She stepped through. The Red Room was not a room. It was a place between places. Walls that pulsed like flesh. Floorboards that breathed. Things moved just beyond the edge of sight. Hands, eyes, teeth. In the center stood a chair, and in the chair, a girl, Lena's sister. But that was impossible. Clara had died 5 years ago, hit by a drunk driver. Yet here she was, young, unaged, weeping. "Help me," Clara said. "I've been here so long." Lena ran to her, took her hand, and then the world screamed. The walls closed in. The floor cracked like glass. Fire, whispers, 1,000 mouths speaking in unison. "You should not be here." Lena turned. Clara was gone. In her place stood a thing, wearing Clara's skin, smiling with too many teeth. She tried to run, but there was no door, only more red. She doesn't remember how she got back. The next morning, she was in her bed. The red door gone, the hallway empty. But something had changed. The apartment smelled of rust. Her hands were covered in scratches. And in the mirror, Clara stared back, smiling. Now, Lena walks the city at night, whispering to walls, tapping on doors that aren't there. Sometimes, if you're awake at 3:03 a.m., you'll hear her knocking. Always 3 times. And if you answer, she'll offer to take you home. To the Red Room, where you belong.